Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today I have the pleasure of having Kent Ritter here sitting in front of me, dialing in from Indianapolis. Kent, welcome to the lab. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ruben. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Kent, we were just talking about offline, so many different directions we can go. And I always like to make this, these when we're on the air, get to know a little bit, have a little bit more context of, who you are first, so that we can actually help extract the value of, what your business does. Because we can't do business with you if you don't understand where you came from. So you have an interesting background, very unique, startup experience, management consulting. You've taken that on to the real estate space, that skill set. I want to go a little bit back and talk about that, because I know you've been able to actually have success for yourself and, achieve financial freedom. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that? And then it'll help us understand where you're at today with what you're doing with Birge Held, and then we'll go into detail. So give a little context with this consulting and the startup. Which one came first, and tie those two together?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to tie them together, because what happened was essentially came out of college, got a job as a management consultant, and in doing that, working with solving problems for these big companies, right? And as we were doing that, happened to be on a couple of projects with the same group of folks. And we got very close, and we ended up deciding to leave and start our own consulting firm. And so really it was just kind of the next transition on. So we left the firm we were at, we started our own firm. It's a boutique management consulting firm, really focused on healthcare, finance, and IT. And just grew up from there. And we grew in time about 5, almost 6 years, to about 30 million in revenue and about 95 employees. And it was a great run. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was like that like typical startup story, where we're like literally around the guy's kitchen table and taking calls in the guest bedroom, and then grew into an office eventually in River North in Chicago, where we had a loft, we had 2 floors, and it really kind of became something. So it was definitely a cool experience.
Kent, who planted the idea? Because I was curious to, there's always, I feel like, that one person in the group. Was it like, yeah, actually this is a good idea? Was it like, no, like who was that in the group? Were you included in that kind of like aggressive, let's play offense, or like, no, we're good where we're at? Where were you at, and who kind of was the catalyst to make that jump? I'm curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So the catalyst of it really was, we were on this project that at the time had this new type of technology, and we were helping this health system figure out how to implement it. And, we saw just this new tech coming, and we're like, man, this is going to be a game changer. Like, everybody's going to want this. And the firm that we were at really was kind of selling their own products to kind of supplement the limitations of the technology that existed at the time, but like not the next gen stuff. So, we recognized that like the company where we were at was going this way. I mean, but we saw the market was going to take a right turn and go in this direction, and they just weren't willing to pivot. I mean, they were kind of, bought into what they were doing and wanted to keep doing that. And that ended up hurting them for a while. They actually, they had to kind of struggle and come back, but we took off like a rocket, because we saw this technology coming. We're like, this is going to be a game changer. And we're like, we need to get out there and get in front of this. And I think because we were the only ones doing what we were doing, and we got really good at it, and we were able to just, again, kind of ride that wave. But so the technology was a catalyst, and like seeing this, just recognizing this technology is going to be this game changer. As far as like the individuals, I mean, there was definitely that mix of like some people are like, hell yeah, let's do it. And others like, oh no, I'm not so sure. And then there's wives involved, there's significant others, right? There's a lot that goes into a decision like that. But yeah, ultimately it was like the belief in that technology and just the idea that like, it's going to be a game changer. And ultimately it was.
Listen, I'm a tech nerd. I got to ask you, I'm not going to leave this on the surface. What was it, like a migration automation? What was it exactly that was completely left field? And it was good for you guys to see that at a high level without boring everybody on the tech side.
Yeah, it's just electronic medical records.
Yeah.
So electronic medical records are ubiquitous now, right? You go everywhere and everybody has them.
Yeah.
But 10 years ago, that wasn't
absolutely
the case.
2009. So it's funny. I was in the same space, right? I forget what they're called. There's a specific code for like even. I forget what it's called. Oh my God, it's going to bother me now. It's like I-80, 1080. I forget what it's called. 89. Yeah. I forget what it's called. But anyways, it's even like from the chart to automating everything so that for every procedure, there's a code.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. Because here's what I'm doing, guys. To your listeners, I'm like, why are we going to the tech? Because there's a connection here. I know that you use this as a USP in your current business. So I'm trying to get some background and some context. So fast forward. So you're doing the consulting. You started your own firm, which is real admirable. And to anybody who's been in the consulting space, when you do see the margins and the billing, what the client is billing, which you're like, hold on, let me do some math here. So good for you margins. For taking the leap. Absolutely. Oh my, yeah. I have a good friend who has a staffing agency. That's actually how we started until we decided to do done for you services and do it in-house. But so good for you for seeing that opportunity. So now, I'm looking at my notes here, just to put it together. So you got your chief financial freedom, and now you're managing director. Some of those who are at Birge Held, right? And those who are in investment finance space, they hear an MD at an investment bank, and et cetera. They're familiar with that. But a managing director in your current role today, and just to put things into context, you guys have over 1.5 billion assets under management, 15,000 plus units, and you're leveraging technology. We're doing affordable housing. We'll talk about the social impact for sure. We won't leave that. But first of all, when you're an MD, managing director, what is that role? So we understand what it is that you're really doing in such a large firm like the one you're working in right now.
Yeah. So good question. So my job really is leading, really co-leading. I have a partner in this, yep. And we lead a line of business. So the easiest way to think about Birge Held. So Birge Held's a large private equity firm. The easiest way to think about it is there's kind of 4 strategies that exist under that firm, and it's ground up development. So building new buildings from the ground up. There's tax credit deals, which is working like with the government to get subsidized deals. There's kind of large market rate deals, I would call it. So like big apartment complexes, 400, 500 unit apartment complexes, getting money from institutions, big checks, $20 million checks, right? And buying these big properties. And then there's what I focus on, which is much more like niche down, which is, really finding more of these diamond in the rough properties, these like small to mid-sized properties. And like, that's relative. So for us, that means anything like under 150 units, and finding in more secondary and tertiary markets. So like really digging for value, right? And, buying from a lot of like mom and pop owners. So folks that maybe ran the apartment as a side gig and didn't really maximize the profit that could come out of it. And we're able to come in and immediately affect value and provide really strong returns to the investors in doing that. So I run the line of business focused on that strategy, and we have a team that's focused on that. And it starts with broker relationships. So just like when you're selling a single family home, right? And you have a realtor in commercial real estate, there's brokers, and they sell all these deals, right? So building relationships with the brokers to make sure you're seeing the good deals. And then my other big role is investor relations and making new investor relationships to bring in capital to the firm for our deals, for people to invest alongside us, but also maintain the relationships with our current investors and what's going on with our current deals. And then finally, it's really asset management. What asset management is essentially making sure that the business plan that we outlined at the beginning of the project is realized. So holding the construction team and property management teams accountable to achieve the goals that we set out.
Okay. So this is, I really like the explanation because it puts things into perspective. First of all, there's no one who's running this thing by yourself, right? I mean, it's just, there's so many just variables and verticals within. And so thanks for putting that into context. But just so we understand a little bit more for our listeners, you mentioned the word private equity. We've heard it thrown around. We see the big players are doing it. You guys are obviously managing a large portfolio. Just to, we'll get down into your specific leg in a second, but just to put things into perspective, is private equity very similar as your traditional syndicator next door, who's a GP, who has, limited partners? Is that considered private equity for those who are listening, or is that, a different model? Could you give us insight as to how that, so we understand the terminologies for those who are listening?
Yeah, no, it's the same. It's the same. I mean, I would say the syndication model is like one piece of private equity. What private equity really just means is you're raising money from investors, but you're creating kind of your own private placements, your own investments. You're not going through the process of listing it on the stock exchange, right? And doing that. So it's really, private equity is just this idea of kind of pooling money together, raising money to go and do an investment. So syndication is an approach like that for sure. And then other model would be just with joint venturing, which would be another partnership model. But absolutely, syndication is the way that we complete most of our deals. So it's going out and raising capital from investors and having them invest alongside us in the deal.
Got it. So that puts us into the next category, right? So you talked about there's a private equity, and then which you guys are obviously doing a lot of, larger deals, ground up, you're doing value add, et cetera. And your focus specifically on, the smaller side, which to your point is, I'm glad you said it's all relative, because, smaller is relatively, it could be anything, right? So 150 and units or less. So more or less, right? And so for those who are, listening, and we're talking about, 150, we talk about the keyword too as affordable housing. I saw that. How does that look like? And how do you strategically seek out these, or again, put the criteria out there to your brokers when you're looking for these specific properties? So let's talk about affordable housing, because I know we talk about the social impact of investing. What does it look like if I'm an operator like you and I'm trying to specifically and maybe even strategically look for affordable housing? What does my criteria look like? Is it the same on the front end and it's different on the back end? What does it look like as far as finding those affordable housing deals?
Yeah, so there's kind of two kinds of affordable housing, I guess you could say. One is like officially affordable housing, like capital A affordable housing, meaning that there's the builder was given tax credits to build a property, and in doing that, maintain rents at a certain level that are affordable to the population. So at maybe, it's got to be affordable to someone that makes like 50% of the area median income. Right. And so that's something where there's actually restrictions on how much you can raise rent based on the income in the area. And to incentivize folks to do that, they get tax credits from the government. So that's kind of real affordable. And that's one of the lines of business within Birge Held. Though what I would call like lowercase affordable housing is housing that just is relatively affordable compared to what's around it. And that's kind of where we work, where, typically the people that live. So another name for it is workforce housing, right? You might hear workforce housing thrown around. And so it's people that live in our apartments typically make between probably 40 to 65,000 a year. And it's largely renters by necessity versus by choice, right? Some people will be lifetime renters. What we mean by affordable is that just HUD, Housing and Urban Development, defines someone is rent burdened if they're paying more than 30% of their income to rent. They say that's too much. Basically 30% is the line of what somebody should be able to afford. So we look at that very closely when we're going to acquire properties, and we look at what that rent to income ratio is. And we like to be in the 20s, in the high teens or low 20s, because that means that we can still come in and we can still add value. We can still raise rents. We can get returns for our investors, but ultimately we're maintaining relative affordability for the residents and the people in that area, right? Because if we're going from 20% to 23%, that's still a nice gap to 30%, right? Which is where we were saying that people are rent burdened. So we look very closely at that metric, because that's our buyer pool, for lack of a better word, right? That's our resident pool. And we want to make sure that we can come in and do the things that we need to do to affect the change and add value to our investors. But at the same time, we're going to be able to rent those apartments, because if we came into a neighborhood and said, okay, we need to increase rent $200 because we're going to do all this stuff, and that's what we need to do, give the return to our investors, but that puts us like $200 above everybody else in the market. Like, nobody's going to rent our properties, right? So you've got to make sure that you're looking at that and just factoring that in. So that's what we mean by affordable. I mean, in our entire portfolio, the average rent is right around $800 a month, which is, relatively affordable to most people. It's affordable to about, I think I had exact numbers with like 76% of the population.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you said that, because I think, one thing is you said the area. So I have a few follow-up questions on that, because I think it's important that we understand, affordable housing relative to the area. Now, that area, right? There's the city, there's urban, there's rural, there's whatever, right? There's more jobs in the city, maybe there's outside the city, it's less. So what defines that area? Is it typically like a zip code? Is it the state? Is it the county? Like what are those metrics that you're looking at when you're doing your analysis?
So when we're looking at it, we're usually looking at a much smaller area. We're usually looking at kind of the 1 mile radius, the 3 mile radius, and the 5 mile radius around a property. Because like when people go to buy a property, or to rent an apartment, excuse me, they don't typically, like, you're not really, like, if I'm moving to Indianapolis and I'm like, I need to rent an apartment, like, I'm not going to look on the west side and on the east side and on the north side and on the south side, right? Yeah. Like you're going to zone in on the area, and that area is most likely going to be somewhere close to where you work, right? Or it's going to be close to where your kids go to school. And you're going to zone in on that, and you're going to look in that like 1 mile area for the apartments there, right? So that really is what becomes your, like, the area, the people that would live at your apartment, and also the area of your competition. So yeah, we're zoning in on kind of those radius areas.
Absolutely. Now, you touched on something that might perk the attention of course, investors, because at the end of the day, you are running a business. So anytime we hear tax credit advantages, our ears perk up, right? So as far as getting the tax credit advantages, what do you know what that process looks like? If you're like, hey, you know what? Look, we feel like we're at a place where we're considered affordable housing. Is it an application? Is it, showing the proof of the rent rolls? Like, how does that process look like to even, be considered, or I guess be approved for getting tax credit advantages via the government?
Well, it really starts way before that. It starts when you're actually going to build the property, and you go in as a developer before you even put a shovel into the ground, and you're putting those agreements together. Essentially saying it's kind of a negotiation with the city, the municipality, to say, okay, we will leave, X% of the units, which could be 100%, could be 30%, X% of the units as, tied to this income level, if you're willing to give us, X amount of tax credits. And so it really starts at the beginning, when the building is going up.
Yeah. So I had a good friend of mine. I don't know if you know Evan Holiday. He's a big construction guy. Yeah. So he was telling me about that on the building side. I was just thinking, on top of my head, so it sounds like this is on the new construction side, but can I get those and create maybe a tax credit incentive for an existing asset if I'm buying it as well?
You can, yeah, you can. It's less common, but yeah, you can.
Why do you think that is? Why wouldn't it? It seems like a no brainer to me, wouldn't it? I mean, again, I'm playing devil's advocate. Why wouldn't I? If again, I'm not so worried about. I feel like there's two types of investors. There's super value add. We don't really care about what's going to happen. We're going to just, with relative to what's around, we're going to, increase value add. We're going to increase rents. We're going to create, gross operating income, increase the property's value and exit. Right. But if I'm thinking like, you know what, I really like what's going on here. I want to just, we talk about the social impact. I want to really conserve, the community, be mindful of that. I'm actually thinking of this again. I don't know that anybody would do this, but this is a case study we're putting out here on the air for us to learn. If I'm looking at a, class B or class A building and I'm like, you know what, actually, and I don't know why you would do this, but let's say you were doing it. I actually want to cut this, building in half, not physically, but, theoretically 50%. I want to make it super affordable. And then I'm going to go back and try to get tax credit advantage for doing that because my goal is I want to create more affordable housing. Is that a realistic case study? And if not, why is that not feasible? And what are some of the kind of loopholes or I guess obstacles that I'd be facing if I wanted to go that route?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, people do it. People do it. Especially if you're of opportunity zones, like opportunity zone areas. So especially in opportunity zone areas, things like that are more common. The rub from like an opportunity zone. So like when you talk about tax credit or like tax advantage, there's like a lot of different ways to go about that, right? Opportunity zones are one of them. Yeah. The rub with opportunity zones on a building that exists is you got to put as much into the building as what you paid for the building to realize the tax savings. So if you think about you're buying it at, say you're buying just throw out numbers, 40,000 a unit, right? But you got to be able to put 40,000 a unit into the building, which is difficult. That's a lot of money to be able to realize that value. So that it doesn't happen as often. Usually it's you're building from the ground up. But, and then tax credit deals, typically the way that these work. So, it'll be a 15-year program. So it's like you're agreeing to keep rent at a certain place for 15 years. Right. And then at the end of those 15 years, you can absolutely go back and say, hey, we're going to keep this affordable. Like, let's do it again. Give us more tax credits. Yeah. And do it again. And so, I mean, people do that.
That's it. Very interesting. Very interesting. So let's talk about the relationship aspect, right? You talked about, building relationship. We hear it all the time. Okay. What does it really look like, Kent? Like, are you making calls every day? Are you remembering their, children, significant others' names, sending flowers? What are you doing to foster these relationships with these brokers? And because again, we talk about it, deals. Everyone wants the deals. Everyone knows what we want. But what does the actual process of fostering relationships actually look like in your world, Ken?
Well, I mean, it's not rocket science. I think it's like building a relationship with anyone, right? Mm-hmm. You need to have fairly frequent contact. Yeah. You need to be interested in them as a person, right? It's just like, it'd be like if you were dating someone, like how would you build a relationship, right? You would maintain contact.
Come on, Ken, that's one person though. We're talking about multiple dates, remembering their names. Help me out here, Kent. How does that look like, when maybe you're not dating, again, philosophically, multiple broker relationships, but I'm assuming you would have to be. So I guess tell us, what is your unique strategy and how do you kind of go about making, managing these relationships at the end of the day?
Yeah. So you take good notes, first of all, because you can't remember everything about everybody in your head. So I use a CRM, customer relationship management software, right? And when I talk to somebody, I make sure I log what we talked about and the things they said. And then next time I have a conversation with them, I pull that up and say, hey, how's Bobby doing? How's tennis camp? How was that? Like just bringing up these things And I think that's how you build that relationship. And then also, I think just treat people with respect. I think a lot of people. So what brokers don't want is they don't want tire kickers, which is a term I hear from brokers, which are people that are just going around kind of saying, "Oh, I might be interested," but because you're wasting their time, and their time is money, right? So I think when you engage with the brokers and do it in a respectful way by preparing ahead of time, right? If you're calling them to talk about a property, know about the property ahead of time, make sure you've done the research, make sure you've read what they've sent out, right? And come with intelligent questions, but don't come with questions that they've already answered for you in the operating memorandum, in the offering memorandum. And so I think that if you just do your homework, and then give them feedback. I think they want feedback. They want, if you look at a property, say, "Hey, I looked at this property. Thanks for sending it to me. It doesn't work for me for XYZ reason."
Yeah.
That gives them feedback and helps them maybe sharpen their sales pitch, but also helps them understand like your box and what you're looking for. And it helps narrow that, right? So they can be more specific about what they send you. Yeah. So, it's just, you just manage the relationship. I mean, I think the following up is the biggest thing, which is probably the easiest thing, but what people don't do is just, call them, text, email every couple of weeks, just to stay top of mind. You got to stay top of mind. You got to think they talk to hundreds of people probably a week. And so you got to make sure that you're making an impression in some way.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I mean, like you said, it's no different than any clients that you have. I mean, just staying in touch, any family member that you have, staying in touch. I mean, it's the reason I went there is because I wanted you to echo that. There's no secret sauce. It's really just a process that you would do in-house in your own very own home, right?
Yeah. And I think the difference is there, when what they want to know more than anything else is what they're judging is this guy going to be able to close this deal more than even being able to pay the most? Is this guy going to be able to close this deal? Because, typically when you're buying an apartment, I mean, it's at least a 60-day process to close a deal. So that's 2 months plus probably a few weeks on the front end. So let's say it's 2.5 months. If the buyer ultimately flakes at the end, the broker's got to start that all over again, right? That's a lot of lost time. So that's what they're looking for. And so when you're talking with them, you want to give them assurances that you're going to close the deal. And you do that by, track record. If you have it, like what deals have you closed, right? Yeah. If you don't have track record, then where are you getting the money? Like what they're looking for are variables that could throw the deal off. And the less variables that you have, the better. So like, where are you going to get your debt from? Where are you going to get your equity from? Right. Like those are two of the biggest things. And like, if you can come and say, "Oh, I've got a relationship with this bank. They're going to finance it. They already know what I'm doing. We've been talking about it." And same thing with equity. If you have an equity source already, if you have the money in hand, that's best. Yeah. If you say you got to go out and raise it, like that's fine, but that's just another risk for the broker. Cause what if you can't raise the money?
Absolutely. Well, right? So that you just threw me an alley-oop, right? Let's talk about the raising capital, right? Because there's two sides to this, right? There's the managing the relationship to get the deals, and then which is one of the most commonly, deals. Now I'm jaded. I'm sure you are too, because I feel like everybody in my circle is looking for deals, right? Or everyone's looking to invest at least. But tell us about, the process of getting people, investors, that again, same thing. They are actually going to put their money. They're not just like, "Oh, I'm interested in real estate."
Yeah.
How are you fostering that network at your level with the size of your firm? Is it at this point when and I'm not talking about existing, investors. I'm talking about like new blood coming into the What does that look like? Is it friends of friends, relatives? How do you do it? And do you feel that there's actually, that's the easier side of the equation, or do you feel that it's actually equally just as hard? And I'm comparing it to the finding the deals part.
Yeah. Oh, is it easier? It's at the beginning, it's harder. Then it becomes just as difficult, and then it becomes easier.
Ooh, that's interesting. I never. Okay, so tell me why you there's like a. It sounds like if you're listening to this right now on the camera, I'm showing like climbing like a mountain. It's like a peak and then a throw and then a peak again. Why does that happen? I'm curious.
Well, so when you're first starting out, right, you can go to, I mean, it's really easy to get deals. You get on the, like this day and age now, every broker just has an email list, right? And you get on the email list and you get blasted out the deals. Like you could have deals all day. Now, are they good deals? That's a different question. But you can have deals all day, right?
Okay, good. I'm glad. So I'm like, are you talking about good deals? Because I want to be on that list. But yeah, no, absolutely right.
But so right, but you may not know anybody that's actually going to give you any money to invest in any of those deals, right? When you're first starting out. And what I found when I was first starting out raising money and doing this is really I underestimated that, even though I had business success, and I think I'd been relatively successful my entire career, even as a management consultant. But people didn't view me as a real estate expert. And it's one thing to be like your friend who you're going to go get beers with, right? Or maybe you played sports in high school with or whatever, versus somebody that you're going to trust with like 50 grand or 100 grand or 150 grand, right?
Money talks.
That, that's a different level of trust. And they may like I have I got a lot of really good friends I love hanging out with who I would not go into business with. Right. Like, I mean, we all do. So I think so what I needed to do, and what I really learned through my first time going out, was I really had to alter people's perception. I had to make people see me as that real estate expert. And I didn't do enough of that front loaded work before I had that first deal and was going to raise for that first deal. Right.
What does that look like for someone who's listening, who's in that exact same position? Like, how do you position yourself? Are we talking personal branding, complete shift? Because it sounds, again, you had the secret ingredients: successful on the corporate side, startup side. We're not doubting you, but it's interesting for me to hear that, because I invest in people. So if I like you and I know you have a good track record, I'm going to double down on you. So that's actually interesting to hear. So it's hard when you don't have a track record. Absolutely. But in your case, you did, right?
Well, I did, but not in real estate. Right. So it was like, yeah, you've done this other stuff, but like, now you're talking about real estate. Like, we haven't heard you talk about real estate before. What's all this? And wait, you want me to actually give you money? Like, okay. Like, I'll go get a beer, but I'm not going to give you 50 grand like that. Right. Like, so it's just a different. So anyway, so
what did you do? Tell us,
what did I do? Yeah. So it starts off by, some of it is absolutely personal branding. You've got to show up like as a professional. And like, even if it's like I would say, like, even if it's your buddy, like, don't make it weird, but even if it's your buddy who like who you get beers with, right? Yeah. If you're going to talk with them about investing, like, don't make it some nonchalant thing. Like, really make it like, sit down, like, invite them out to dinner, pay for their dinner, and tell them about what you're doing, and really have a plan, like have a presentation, walk them through it, like really take it seriously. Right. I think that's one thing. I mean, you got to judge your relationship with everybody. Like, don't make it weird if that's going to be super weird, but like, but you get what I'm saying, right? You get what I'm saying.
Know your audience.
Know your audience. A credibility book is a big thing. So what that is like a resume on steroids. So like, what it should have in it is, like who you are, but more than that, like, it should outline your previous successes, but it also needs to tie your previous successes to like why those are applicable to real estate. And then as you build a portfolio, then your portfolio goes in that credibility book. And it's like, hey, but look, here's what I've done. And here's what I've done. And this. And as you build that track record, right. And that helps with brokers. It helps with lenders. It helps with equity investors. It helps with everybody. So you should have that, and it should look professional. You should get a graphic designer, let them do it up nice.
You could just give a shout out to Invested Talent. Right. That's our company.
Yeah.
Just reach out to us. Come on.
Just hire Ruben. He'll hook you up. But it's just really important. And then, so friends and family. So you start that. So one is you just talking about it all the time, right? Like you should start talking about real estate to your friends and family 6 months before you actually ask them for money. That's what I didn't do. That's what I should have done.
So then let's, I'm so glad I love this topic. So let's leave something tactical, right? You talk about, again, context is everything, the environment, presentation, like take it seriously. Don't make it weird. I love how you say that. That's hilarious. Don't make it weird, y'all. Keep it 100, right? But what else? Because I like what you're saying. The presentation is key. What else? Meetups.
So that's the next level, right? So friends and family, it's just like you need to change their perception to show of who you are. They need to perceive you as a real estate investor and as somebody that's responsible enough that they would give you money, which is very different. And I've had people come to me and want to partner and say, hey, I got these great networks, through maybe another business. I know all these rich people. I can raise money for you. I was like, okay, yeah, we'll see. And go out and they try it. And it's like, oh, that's hard. And it's like, it is hard because maybe like you may know all these rich people, but they view you as someone that provides them a service, not someone that they're trusting with their money. Right.
That's so interesting. What a paradigm shift.
You have to change people's perception. So that's friends and family. Yeah. So move on to the next level, right? When you start getting outside of your like maybe first, second level relationships, then it's all about, you've got to have a thought leadership platform. So you've got to have some way where you're showing and displaying your expertise. Right. And so I have a monthly meetup that I run, right? It's a monthly just real estate investor networking event where I bring in guests and I host it. And I heard somebody say this one time. I wish I remembered who it was so I could credit him, but it's great to be at somebody else's party. But if you're the host of the party, you immediately are like the star of the show, right? So it's great to go on other people's podcasts. I love being on other people's podcasts, but I also have my own podcast because if you're the host, you're the star of the show, right? Like there's just that instant credibility of like hosting it and owning it. So same thing with the networking meetup I do. So I have a podcast, I do the meetup, have a website, kentritter.com. You can go check it out. Have a blog on that. And so these different ways where I'm showing expertise, right? And displaying a sense of professionalism, right? You go to my website, I'm not wearing a t-shirt and ripped jeans. I'm wearing a suit, right? You need to display yourself in the right way, for your audience, right? Know your audience. But I think that thought leadership platform is critical because otherwise you can only have so many one-to-one conversations. And those are my favorite. Like I love having the one-to-one conversations with people, but that's a slow process working off referrals to build a network, right? Yeah. A platform like this, like what you and I are doing, this is like a one-to-many relationship, right? Where we do this one time and this lives in the cloud and people can access this 2 years from now and see who we are, right? And like I have people on my podcast, I love looking at the map because you can see where people listen. It's like there's people listening in like Singapore, Japan, like Africa. I'm like, why are these people listening to me? But it's cool. I mean, so you could really spread a wide net, right?
I that's so important. Let's talk about that for a second. So, because now you're tapping into our world, brought to you by Invested Talent, this segment right here. How important has, I think we throw the word around social media platforms, but that again, to those folks who are not familiar, that's a website. That's, Zoom, what we're doing right now. It's LinkedIn, it's Facebook, it's Instagram, it's Spotify, it's iTunes. So how, like from a real KPI, because we talk about how important it is, but have you been able to measure? I'm curious because I ask this to all my clients all the time, and
Yeah.
I have some real data, but I'm curious for you.
Yeah.
Have you seen it to be impactful for your business as a real estate operator?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. From just being able to meet investors and raise capital from sources that I never would have met without it. Right. Like I love this, and my podcast is a year old. So it's fairly young, but this has just started happening within the past couple of months where I have, somebody want to set up a call with me. And I said, great. Yeah. Let's get on the phone. And I'll start going through like, here's who I am. Here's my background. They're like, oh no, like I already know all that. I've listened to like 20 of your podcast episodes. Like I actually feel like we have a really good rapport. And like, how easy of a conversation is that then? That's such an easy conversation. It's like, okay, so, what questions can I answer?
Absolutely.
And they're like, and you answer 3 or 4 questions and they're like, okay, well, can I get on your deal list? I'm like, absolutely. And so like, that's why you do that, right? Because, it's like cliche, but like know, like, and trust. Right. And so you build, and I experienced this when I first started out as a real estate investor. My first go-to source were podcasts. I just started devouring podcasts, and you do build like a sense of rapport with these people, right? There's people that you resonate with, you listen to their podcast, and then you do build like this sense of, them. And so I experienced that. And so now others are experiencing that with me. And I think it's just a really cool way to get yourself out there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. One of my coaches says, when you have core content, it's so that when you get on a call, you're not selling, you're closing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they
That's right.
have that, right? You don't want to sell on a call.
Oh,
right?
The other thing I got to say and I know what you mean by sell. There's like good selling and bad selling, right? Yeah. Like we all know what bad selling feels like when we've been sold to, you feel kind of like you got to like take a shower afterwards. Right. But like, I would say I don't even want to sell, because to me, multifamily real estate investing is such a no-brainer that if I'm able to educate people in the way that I've been educated, they come to the conclusion on their own and say, oh yeah, why wouldn't I do this? So I don't even feel like you have to sell. I feel like if I educate them, because a lot of it is honestly just ignorance, and ignorance isn't bad, right? Ignorance doesn't mean you're dumb. Ignorance just means you're unfamiliar. And so it's a lot of people are unfamiliar because I didn't know about this 5 years ago. I had no idea. And I fancy myself a pretty savvy investor, and it's a complicated process. So a lot of it is just helping people get over those hurdles, to just understand the process and how it works and the benefits of it. And if you can do that, then a lot of people, you see that light bulb go on and they're like, yeah, of course I should be investing in this.
Yeah. Wow. So good. So good. I'm so glad we touched on this, because it's something I'm really, genuinely passionate about. And I'm sure my audience will resonate with this as well. But now we talked about, fostering a relationship with the gatekeepers on the front end. We talked about, building your personal brand and your expertise and your tracker. One thing you talked about that I want to make sure doesn't slip through the cracks is you talked about having like an actual result, right? That matters, right? You can't go around talking about, but you don't have results to show for, or at least from a partner. And then when you gain traction, that's also easy. So always leading with the result. Now that we have the asset, you have very unique background when it comes to technology. And one thing I really wanted to talk about with you is, okay, you talk about leveraging this technology that's so relevant and prevalent in our world right now into value add for properties. What does that look like in your vertical when you're looking to add value add while leveraging technology?
Absolutely. So yeah, this is definitely a passion project of mine over the past year, has really just educating myself to make sure we're on the cutting edge of the technology that's coming out. Because the PropTech space has exploded. And if I do another quick shameless plug, I recently wrote an article in Forbes talking about just that, how PropTech is changing multifamily. And some of the research I did in that article, it's like there's been like $40 billion invested in the last 2 years into the PropTech market. Like, and there's so many companies that have exploded because of that. There's so many options.
PropTech stands for property
technology. Yeah. So like, so let me give you a great example. Smart locks, right? So smart locks, meaning a lock that you can open with your phone, right?
I'm so glad you said that, because we specialize in short-term rentals portfolio. Yeah. Everything is managed remotely. We're talking about cameras, everything. And so it's so actually refreshing to hear that you're bringing that into the multifamily space, because I feel like that's short-term rentals is probably, I don't know if it's maybe a newer / sexier model, but it's good to see, refreshing, bringing in that fresh blood. That's interesting.
So the reason that most people want to go big in apartments is because it's really hard to manage small apartments.
Yeah.
So the way that we're solving that problem is through technology, right? And we're really following the short-term rental model. It's smart locks, cameras, layering software on top of the smart locks so that we can do self-guided tours. So people can go and they can tour a property and an apartment without having to have a leasing agent with them, right? You can do it on your own schedule, at your own time, at your own pace. And then like there's a few other things that we're doing, but layering on like AI chat bots to engage with people on the website. Just virtual leases. So just being able to sign up for a lease virtually, right? Through DocuSign. Yeah. And when you bring all these things together, it's like the use case that we were trying to solve for that's like so consultant of me. The use case we're trying to solve.
I know. I'm totally eating up your language. Absolutely.
What was a contactless leasing process, right? Which started before COVID, but was very much expedited by COVID. Because we wanted people to be able to go on to the website or apartments.com, wherever they find us, schedule a tour, learn about the apartment, see it, have a virtual tour, great imagery, but then schedule an in-person tour, go and do that tour without ever having to contact a person or be face-to-face with a person. So the way the smart lock works is when they sign up for a tour, right before the tour, they get a code to their phone. They hold their phone up to the lock opens, they enter the property. They go through a self-guided tour, which actually walks them through the property with like these geolocation beacons. It's pretty cool. So it knows where they are and like talks to them about what's going on, where they are, like, hey, welcome to the pool. Here's all the good stuff about the pool. And then they can say, hey, I like this place. I want to sign up for a lease. And they can do it right there. They get the background checks and things get done. Lease pops up, they sign, and they're ready to go.
Is this all third-party applications? What are you using? I'm curious. Like, is it like?
So it's several technologies that are layered on. So the hardware is, the smart lock, and we use a Schlage smart lock. Now, like with smart locks, there's $200 smart locks, there's $1,500 smart locks, right? It depends on the class of building and the type of property you want, right? But we use a very basic like Schlage deadbolt, but it works. It's Bluetooth enabled is the important thing. And then you layer technology onto that, which we use a lot of RealPage products. And so like Stratus is the software we use to control the smart locks remotely. They were recently bought by RealPage.
No kidding.
And then we use Tour 24 is the name of the self-guided tour product. And that's the one that kind of brings it all together and enables the tour and sends the code and syncs with the smart locks and all that stuff.
Wow.
And then we use RealPage's virtual leasing product, and then DocuSign for the actual signatures.
Got it.
So bring all these pieces together.
So this is from I guess onboarding. You've been focusing strategically on how can we make it a seamless process with onboarding, bringing in new I'm so used to saying the word guests. Residents. Residents. Yeah. Thank you to the property. That's very interesting. Wow. So that's your USP right there.
Yeah. And It's been great, and it's working. It's still, I mean, we've probably had it live 6 months, so on our earliest property, and then we've been installing it on other properties. So it's still early, but we're seeing really positive results. The residents like it. We didn't underwrite any upside of like, hey, we're putting smart locks in so we can charge people $20 more, because we weren't sure. But I think in reality, I think the residents do view it as a value-added amenity, and
Absolutely.
I think you could command a rent premium by putting smart locks in.
That's really interesting. Noted. Wow, that's fascinating. So as far as so that's one thing on the smart locks. As far as any strategies that you would say you guys really specialize in, is it your traditional value add? We're going to change the floors. We're going to do this. Like what is typically in scope for your kind of projects, so that we get a feel?
Yeah. So there's there's all the normal stuff like improving the interiors, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to put in floors and you're going to paint and, cabinets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
One thing though, that's pretty cool is we actually are putting in fiber optic internet at all of our properties and really in a sense becoming the internet service provider for the residents. And it's an additional revenue stream because we pay the upfront cost to run the fiber. I mean, dig a hole, run the fiber, wire the properties, but then the modems and routers are already in the units. And so it's a benefit for the resident because they don't have to deal with the cable company, because like nobody likes dealing with the cable company. And when the resident moves in, we flip a switch and their internet's live. They're going. They don't have to wait for Comcast to show up or whoever, right? We also are giving them a better product because it's fiber optic internet, which is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And you've got, typically like 250 megabits down, 250 megabits also uploading, which if you're in the Zoom world we're in, like uploading matters, right? And we do a market survey. And so we charge them less than what they were already paying for internet. We're just shifting. They're paying over here. Now they're going to pay us, and it creates a new revenue stream for the property. It's innovative. It's an amenity that others don't have. So it's not just like putting in floors and paint and stuff. Like everybody's doing that, but not many people are putting in fiber internet at their properties.
That's awesome. And you've strategically created a partnership with a third party to get it at the wholesale price lower. And then you do.
That's right.
That's awesome.
That's right. Yeah,
good for you for doing that. That's very unique. I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing. One thing I was going to give you a little nugget. Are you familiar with the community app?
No.
Okay. I think you might appreciate this because community app is like a texting platform that a lot of influencers are using. We even use it in-house. And technically, if I tell you, hey, text me Indianapolis, you'll text me Indianapolis, you'll put in your name, Kent Ritter, and everything, where you're from, birthday, etc. And I can text you back any links. Hey guys, how's the heat? Type yes if it's too high, or type no, like how's the temperature? How's the internet? You can, and so the thing is, when you've raised your hand and you've texted me Indianapolis, maybe it's the property Indianapolis, I now have batched you on the back end of my database. I'm saying, we're gonna send a text box and we're gonna ask you guys to fill out a survey. We're going to actually make an announcement for the building, and everyone's on their phones at attention. So you can really build lists. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
We're using it in-house. I think you might appreciate it. And it might serve you well since you're another tech guy. I'll make sure I'll send it your way.
That's great, because honestly, it's like, the way that we do it now is email, and email is just becoming like more and more relevant.
You know what's happening. Exactly. People are looking at their phones.
So I love that idea. Appreciate it.
It works really well.
Yeah.
And you can take them where you want. You can send a link and be like, follow us here. We're going live there, or like whatever in your business, wherever in your business. It could be useful.
Right on.
I might appreciate that. Awesome. So listen, this was, man, I can't believe it's already been an hour. You gave so much juice. And I'm so grateful personally, and I know our listeners are going to find it super valuable. One of the things that I definitely want to ask you before you leave is, you did talk about the advantages of buying smaller units. And for you, smaller in your world is anywhere from 150 to lower. Can you give us some quick ideas or insights or paradigm shifts as to why maybe I should consider that slot versus super large? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, for sure. So I would start with there's just less competition. So one of the toughest parts about the market today is there's just so many people that want to buy apartments, right? There's so many syndicators, there's so many groups out there that it's in hot markets, it's not uncommon to have 20, 30 groups bidding on a property. In that environment, it's impossible to pay a decent price for that property. So a lot of those groups focus on either maybe it's 200. So it's like, okay, 200 plus, that's where the institutions and the REITs and everybody plays, right? They don't really go down and below that because their overhead's so high, they need to deploy a lot of capital, right? Yeah. So if you can stay under 200, you kind of weed all them out because you're never going to compete with them because their capital is cheaper and they can pay more. Then you have like all the guru groups, right? Like all the people that teach people how to be syndicators. Mm-hmm. Well, almost all of them that I've ever experienced tell people you got to go 100 units plus, 100 units plus, 100 units plus. So there's a lot of people trying to go 100 units plus. So if you can stay under 100 units, you weed out all those people, right? And there really is a sweet spot where, maybe it's like 80, like maybe it's like 20 to 30 to like 80 units.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of a no man's land, because if you go lower than 20, then you have all like the small players who are buying quads and 10 plexes and stuff like that. And that again ends up with a lot of competition, but those guys look at 20 and say, oh, it's too big, I can't touch that.
Absolutely.
When in reality, I mean, buying a 20 unit is the same as buying a duplex. Like it's buying a 200 unit. It's really the same. It's like the thing that takes longer is like, you got to walk more units, right, to check them out. Yeah. But it's the same process. But so anyway, there's less competition, right? And if there's less competition, you're going to be able to buy at a better value. So that's number one. I'd say also the buyer profile. So that's the buyer profile. The seller profile is different too, right? If you're buying from a sophisticated syndicator or institution, they've squeezed the juice out of that turnip, right? They've gotten everything that they could out of that to return value to their investors, right? As they should.
Yeah.
But if you're buying from a mom and pop who maybe runs it on the side and like bought it 10 years ago and the thing's just appreciated so much that they don't even care, like to squeeze the last bit out of it, there's just more meat on the bone. Mm. So, I mean, it's a very common situation where we'll come in and it's 100% occupied, but it's $100 or $150 under the market in rent because they haven't raised rent in 3 or 4 years, because they don't want the headache. It's easy if it's 100% occupied. It just keeps giving cash, Yeah. So for those reasons alone, and there's other reasons too. There's also just from a debt side, there's small balance loan products versus conventional loan products. So like Fannie, Freddie, the agency's small balance products are much easier to get into. They have lower requirements. They're cheaper from like upfront money you have to put in, and it's easier to get more leverage. It's a really good like entry level product for somebody to use. Like, I mean, we did like 3 deals last year where we used the Freddie Mac small balance loan product.
No
and it just, cause it's super straightforward. It makes a lot of sense. So there's good debt at that level too, that you can find. And so there's a lot of reasons. The con is they're tough to manage. It's really hard to manage a 30 or 40 unit property, even a 50 to 70 unit property, because all the big property managers out there won't touch it. It's not big enough for them. So you got to go down to that next level. And at that next level, the professionalism, the quality becomes hit or miss. And so you got to find a good manager. You got to be up for managing it yourself.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you went into depth with that, and I can't thank you enough. I know how super valuable your time is today, and you came in and gave us everything, the motivation, insights, true tactical steps that we can take. I want to give this favor and welcome everyone to go to KentRitter.com. Check out what Kent is doing on Instagram. It's Ritter on Real Estate. And we definitely will include in the show notes the article that you recently wrote on Forbes, especially us tech nerds and investors. I mean, you got to stay ahead of the game. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you always got. And I think you're a true embodiment of what an experimenter is, because it's about experimenting new things into your business verticals and then doubling down on what works. So thank you for bringing it full circle and being a true practitioner. We love entrepreneurs. We love those who implement systems, take action, and walk the walk and talk the talk. And today you did that. So thank you, Kent. Where else do you also want to send us? Is there a place that we don't know that we should be checking out? We did leave a few links, but where else should we check you out?
I mean, the website is my home base. You can get to everything from there. But if you want to just go straight to the podcast, it's Ritter on Real Estate. You can find it on any podcast platform. And it's really focused on helping people make better investment decisions. So I made some mistakes when I started out. I don't want you to make those same mistakes. And that's what it's all about. Just having a resource to make you a smarter, better investor, whether you're a passive investor or whether you're trying to buy your own deals.
That's awesome. You heard it from the man himself. And just like that, we are out.